I want to share with you Marsha Linehan's perspectives on suicide because I really feel like, in a lot of ways, many theorists of suicide have focused on why would a person want to kill themselves. And Marsha Linehan actually flips it around and asks a different question. What do we have that's worth living for? And so let me start by giving you a little bit of background on Marsha Linehan. She's an important figure in psychology. She was born in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1943. She was diagnosed with schizophrenia when she was 18 years old. She received at that time electroconvulsive therapy, so shock therapy, seclusion therapy, not something that gets done very much anymore, but it was basically isolating the person, and antipsychotics. She actually believed that she had borderline personality disorder, and so she believed that she was misdiagnosed. And Marsha Linehan actually went on to develop a, a, an important contribution to therapy with a type of therapy called dialectical behavioral therapy, so DBT. So DBT is a treatment for borderline personality disorder. As you can see, she may have wanted to work on a solution that would have been helpful for her herself. And what it does is it actually blends in Buddhist practices with psychological interventions. The word dialectical is not one that we use very often, and it actually means two polar opposites that can exist at the same time. And the main one that she talks about is the tension between saying that we should change and that we should accept ourselves the way that we can. So her therapy is framed around this idea that you can accept yourself exactly as you are, and yet also um, engage in change. And I think that's a wonderful model for, just a healthy human being, that we should not sit in judgment and criticism and put downs towards ourselves, and yet we should also be engaging and work towards growth and development and becoming better. And so again, that those ideas took some Zen Buddhist philosophy and practices and brought that into psychological conceptualization. And Marsha Linehan is actually a Roman Catholic, and I think her Catholicism could be at play as well, because many Catholics and Christians recognize that God loves us just the way we are, but God also asks us to grow and develop and follow God's will. And so there's this combination of loving acceptance, but also uh, commands to grow and mature. So again, these reasons for living are really a new paradigm for studies on suicide. Up till her study, and it occurred in 1983, most research had focused on factors that contributed to suicidality, that made suicide more likely. So things like depression, substance use, things like that. And Linehan was interested in the reasons why a person might decide that suicide was not the right option. And it really was bringing in ideas of existentialism and cognitivism. So the existentialists, like Viktor Frankl, were living in the shadow of World War II and asked, well, what enables a person to go on despite experiencing great suffering? And for Frankl, the answer was the ability to find meaning or purpose in life. In fact, Frankl developed a therapy called logotherapy that was basically involved helping people find their purpose, find their meaning, and pursue it fully. And so she's taking those kind of ideas, but she's also borrowing from cognitivists like Aaron Beck, who held that beliefs were important mediators of suicidal behaviors. And so she was really trying to find belief systems, meaning systems, that might help protect a person from carrying out the act of suicide, because they provided meaning and purpose. So in her study, and it was actually a series of studies, but she found that there was 6 clusters of beliefs that were that she called reasons for living. The first one was survival and coping beliefs. So this is where a person believes that they can cope or find solutions. So some people find meaning and purpose just in the fact that they are survivors. And so for people who strongly value this, the coping and survival of, whether it's a mental disorder or it's difficult circumstances, that's part of their identity. That's actually part of where they get their worth and, again, the reason for living. The second one is responsibility to family. So some people believe that their family depends on them, and because of that, they feel like they should keep on to support their family, to be a part of their family. Others, the third one, it's child-related concerns. So this is specifically for children. For some people, the reason for living is that they are worried about the negative effects on their children should they die, and so they want to be there for their children. Fourth is the fear of suicide itself, and there's the act of suicide can be painful, and there's violence involved in it, and some people are afraid of that pain and violence, and for that reason they don't have interest in suicide. After that, there's the fear of social disapproval. So this idea that their legacy after they're gone would be tarnished by a suicide, by the fact that they gave up, and so they believe others would judge them, and so that is part of what keeps them going. And then lastly, moral objections, and in some ways they can actually be reframed as religious objections, because the questions for this are largely about believing that suicide is morally wrong and against their religion. And so again, Linehan found these and argued that these are the deeper meaning systems that people have that allow them to feel like they have a reason for living. And it could be, again, the religious beliefs of their God. It could be wanting to seek out social approval, wanting to protect themselves and be free of violence. It could be wanting to support their kids, their family, or just, again, the idea that they are survivors. And so I enjoy this because it's a little bit different from the rest of the theories. So what was significant about Marsha Linehan? Her work was influential in several ways. It helped shift the focus of suicidology back to psychological perspectives. At the time, there was a lot of sociological research on suicide. This is really emphasizing the belief systems, and obviously hopelessness was one of those considerations, but it expanded it beyond just that one variable. Secondly, it provided a positive and hopeful perspective on suicide prevention. It's about fostering positive beliefs rather than just mitigating negative beliefs. And then third, it expanded just beyond just mere hopelessness, the cognitive schemas that should be targeted. So sure, you want to reduce hopelessness, but now you can increase the feeling that they are that they can provide for their children or their family, increase the belief that they should be a survivor, or that they should find religious and moral purpose for their lives. And finally, her work foreshadowed some of Joiner's work because she emphasized fear of suicide. And Thomas Joiner, we'll talk about him soon, emphasized the capability for suicide as an important aspect of suicide. So in arguing that one of the barriers for suicide is fear of suicide, she argued essentially that some people don't have that fear and maybe have more capability. Okay, hopefully you find that interesting.